The air in Monsieur Antoine Dubois Sr.'s office always felt unnaturally still, thick with the scent of expensive leather and unspoken condescension. It was a stark contrast to the controlled chaos I thrived in downstairs, the kinetic energy of Éclat's kitchen. My kitchen, in truth, though never in name. I sat opposite him, the heavy mahogany desk a veritable chasm between us. His son, Antoine Dubois Jr., the celebrated head chef of Éclat, lounged in the adjacent chair, meticulously studying the shine on his designer loafers. He hadn't made eye contact since I'd walked in. "Amelia," Monsieur Dubois began, his voice smooth but devoid of warmth, like polished riverstone. "We appreciate your dedication over these past 3 years. Your contributions have certainly been noted." The slight pause before noted was deliberate, a subtle dismissal disguised as corporate politesse. I felt a familiar tightening in my chest, the precursor to an indignation I'd learned to swallow. "However," he continued, steepling his fingers, "the restaurant landscape is constantly evolving. We've decided it's time to restructure the kitchen brigade, to streamline operations, you understand. As such, the position of sous chef will regrettably be made redundant. Redundant, like a worn-out cog in his gleaming machine, not like the heart and soul that had pumped life back into his flagging establishment. 3 years ago, Éclat had been respectable but stagnant, coasting on a reputation earned a decade prior. It was comfortable, predictable, and slowly fading. Then I arrived, brimming with ideas, passion, and a deep connection to the region's culinary heritage that the Paris-trained Antoine Jr. lacked entirely. Antoine finally stirred, shifting in his seat. "We're moving towards a more avant-garde direction," he mumbled, the words sounding rehearsed. He still wouldn't look at me. "My new menu concepts require a different synergy, a fresh perspective." His menu concepts. Bile rose in my throat. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. I wanted to scream, to throw the ridiculously heavy crystal paperweight on the desk straight at his perfectly coiffed head. His concepts? The terroir oublié, the forgotten local soil. The tasting menu that had resurrected Éclat from the brink of mediocrity and earned it its coveted 3rd Michelin star just 6 months ago? That menu was born from my soul, painstakingly researched over countless weekends exploring forgotten villages, poring over brittle, centuries-old cookbooks in dusty provincial archives, and forging relationships with local artisans and farmers, who guarded their ancestral techniques and heirloom varietals like sacred trusts. I spent a year coaxing forgotten flavors back to life. I convinced old Madame Dubois, no relation thankfully, just a shared common name and a generations-old friendship with my grandmother, to part with a small precious portion of her intensely aromatic black truffles, grown only on her small plot of land nestled in the hills. Truffles she'd previously refused to sell to any restaurant, let alone one run by the likes of Antoine Dubois Jr. I'd found the last farmer growing the tiny, intensely sweet fraises des bois that had once carpeted the local forests. I'd rediscovered the precise, almost forgotten method for slow-smoking river trout using juniper branches, learned from an elderly fisherman in a remote hamlet. I meticulously wove these treasures, these stories, into a narrative tapestry on the plate. Each course was a revelation, a dialogue between past and present. It was challenging, technically demanding, requiring skills far beyond Antoine's classic, albeit competent repertoire. I trained the commis chefs, drilled the line cooks, oversaw every detail from sourcing to plating. Antoine, meanwhile, excelled at schmoozing critics in the dining room, posing for magazine photos, and regurgitating the poetic menu descriptions I'd written for him. He was the face, I was the ghost in the machine. The 3rd star wasn't just a victory, it was my victory. Yet every interview, every article, lauded Chef Antoine Dubois Jr.'s genius, his bold return to roots, his visionary interpretation of terroir. My name appeared only in the small print list of kitchen staff, if at all. Now, sitting in this cold office, listening to the architect of my erasure dismiss my life's work, I focused on keeping my breathing even. "I understand," I managed, the calmness in my voice surprising even myself. But it wasn't surrender. It was the eerie calm of a storm gathering force just over the horizon. I had seen this coming. Weeks ago, a carelessly forwarded email chain had landed in my inbox. Monsieur Dubois Sr. to Antoine Jr. Capitalize on the Michelin hype for the next quarter. Then we optimize costs. Moreau is excellent, yes, but expensive and frankly replaceable now the concept is established. That young chap from the LeBron Academy, your old schoolmate, comes highly recommended and at half the price. We need youth, dynamism, someone more aligned with the brand. Antoine's reply, agree. We'll get the recipes codified. Need to ensure continuity. Continuity. Codified. They plan to steal my soul, bottle it, label it Dubois, and sell it cheap. The email confirmed the whispers I'd heard, the sideways glances from the front-of-house manager, the sudden chilliness from Antoine whenever I suggested a new refinement to his signature dishes. The star had made me, the anonymous sous chef, inconvenient. Naturally, we've prepared a severance package, Monsieur Dubois Sr. said, sliding a thick, cream-colored envelope across the polished expanse of the desk. The Eclat logo was embossed in gold. 2 months' salary, full benefits continuation for that period, and of course, a glowing letter of recommendation highlighting your efficiency. Efficiency. Not creativity, not innovation, not the goddamn miracle I'd performed. I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy, inert, worthless. The letter inside would be flowery, meaningless praise, carefully worded to avoid acknowledging my true contribution while fulfilling a legal obligation. It wouldn't mention the recipes, the techniques, the soul I'd poured into Eclat. You can clear out your locker by the end of service today, Antoine instructed, finally finding the courage to meet my gaze now that the deed was almost done. His eyes held a flicker of something. Guilt? No, more likely annoyance that I wasn't making a scene. Please ensure all recipes, supplier contacts, and procedural notes are handed over to Jean-Pierre before you leave. We need a seamless transition, Jean-Pierre, the boy wonder from the LeBron Academy. Young, eager, connected through family ties to the Dubois clan, and utterly incapable of understanding the nuance, the history, the feeling embedded in the terroir oublié menu. He would follow the codified recipes like a robot, producing technically correct but soulless plates, a perfect puppet. Of course, I said, allowing a faint smile to touch my lips. Everything will be left in perfect order. Jean-Pierre will have everything he needs. Everything that belongs to Eclat, that is. The slight emphasis was lost on them. They were already mentally moving on, picturing their streamlined, cost-effective future. Relief washed over their faces, tangible even in the sterile office air. No tears, no shouting, no desperate pleas to reconsider. Just quiet, professional acceptance. I was making this easy for them. Too easy. What they didn't know, couldn't possibly fathom, was that their betrayal hadn't broken me. It had ignited a fire. And my plan, carefully constructed in the weeks since that damning email, was already in motion. The moment I walked out of this office, the first domino would fall. Their gilded cage was about to lose its shine. The walk back down the plushly carpeted stairs from Monsieur Dubois' office felt surreal. The familiar, hushed elegance of Eclat's main dining room, usually a source of quiet pride, now seemed suffocating, artificial. Crystal glasses gleamed. Under soft lighting, pristine white tablecloths stood like silent sentinels, awaiting the evening's performance. A performance built on a lie. My lie, soon to be theirs entirely. My mind raced, replaying the cold finality of their words, the casual cruelty masked by corporate jargon. Redundant, streamline, optimize. Words designed to dehumanize, to reduce years of passion and artistry to a line item on a balance sheet. But beneath the initial sting of betrayal, a different emotion was bubbling up. A fierce, protective anger, not just for myself, but for the integrity of the food, the stories, the heritage they were so eager to exploit and discard. That carelessly forwarded email hadn't just been a warning, it had been a catalyst. Reading their calculated plan to erase me, capitalize on the hype, Moreau is replaceable, get the recipes codified, had initially left me breathless with fury. I'd wanted to storm into Antoine's office, confront him, expose him. But years working in the high-pressure, often cutthroat world of haute cuisine had taught me patience, strategy. A public outburst would achieve nothing but temporary satisfaction and potentially damage my own reputation. No, This required a different approach. A chef's approach, meticulous preparation, precise execution. My first step had been quiet confirmation. I subtly checked the restaurant's digital recipe archives. Sure enough, Antoine had recently uploaded simplified, almost rudimentary versions of my terroir oublié dishes, stripping away the crucial nuances, the non-standard techniques, the specific temperature controls learned through painstaking trial and error. Details I had deliberately kept only in my personal coded notebooks. He'd listed standard suppliers, omitting the exclusive, small-batch producers I'd cultivated. It was a clumsy attempt to capture lightning in a bottle, doomed to fail, but legally sufficient, he likely thought, to claim ownership. The supplier list was key. My connection to Madame Dubois and her unique truffles was personal, rooted in family history. My arrangement with Monsieur Bertrand, the elderly farmer who grew the fraise des bois, was based on mutual respect and a shared passion for preserving heirloom varieties. He wouldn't sell to just anyone, especially not the arrogant Antoine. The juniper smoking technique for the trout? Learned verbally, never written down in the restaurant's logs. These weren't just ingredients or methods, they were relationships, knowledge passed down, elements intrinsically tied to me. They couldn't be codified or handed over like a piece of equipment. Armed with this knowledge, the anger began to coalesce into resolve. They wouldn't just fire me, they would try to steal my legacy. I wouldn't let them. That's when I thought of Isabella Rossi. Isabella wasn't just the city's most discerning food critic. She possessed an almost unnerving intuition for authenticity. Her reviews of Eclat after the third star were glowing, yet held a subtle undercurrent of questioning. She praised the food lavishly but focused on the almost miraculous transformation, the newfound depth, hinting that it felt distinct from Antoine's previous, more predictable style. She had interviewed Antoine, of course, but I recalled her asking me pointed questions during a brief kitchen encounter about ingredient sourcing and specific techniques. Questions Antoine likely wouldn't have been able to answer in detail. Finding. Her private contact information wasn't difficult. The culinary world is surprisingly small. I drafted the email carefully, outlining my situation concisely, attaching scanned pages from my personal notebooks, dated, detailed entries documenting the evolution of each dish, and copies of my exclusive agreements with key suppliers. I didn't ask for pity. I presented a case, a business proposition. Her response came within hours. Amelia, I suspected as much. Antoine's sudden genius always felt borrowed. Meet me tomorrow, my treat. Let's talk about the future. Our meeting took place at a discreet cafe far from Eclat's territory. Isabella, sharp, impeccably dressed, and radiating quiet intensity, listened intently as I laid out the full story, the email evidence, the deliberate omissions in the restaurant's official records. She examined my notebooks with forensic focus. This, she said, tapping a page detailing the precise humidity and temperature fluctuations needed for aging a particular local cheese I used, is not something you learn in culinary school. This is generational knowledge. This is yours. She then revealed her own long-held ambition to open a restaurant that truly celebrated the region's culinary heritage, moving beyond the often stifling constraints of traditional French haute cuisine. She had the financial backing, the location scouted, the business acumen. What she lacked was the perfect chef, someone with both the vision and the technical skill. Fate, perhaps? She'd smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed her usually stern features. They are fools, Amelia. They're discarding the goose that laid the golden egg, and they don't even realize the egg is intricately watermarked. We spent hours outlining a plan, not just a new restaurant, but a counter-narrative. We would launch racines, routes, timed strategically. We would secure exclusive rights with my key suppliers. We would hire the talented commis chefs. I had trained the ones loyal to the craft, not just the paycheck. We would build racines on the pillars of authenticity, transparency, and respect. Everything Eclat, under the Dubois regime, lacked. The contracts were drawn up by Isabella's formidable lawyers, ironclad documents establishing our partnership, my creative control, and safeguarding my intellectual property. Signing them felt like drawing a line in the sand. My fear and anger were replaced by a sense of purpose, a thrilling, albeit nerve-wracking determination. Returning to the Éclat kitchen after the meeting with the Dubois felt like stepping onto a stage for the final act of a play where only I knew the true ending. The usual clatter and tension seemed distant. I saw the sympathetic glances from Marie, the head pâtissière, and the wary curiosity from Luc, my most trusted line cook. They knew something was wrong. The kitchen grapevine was ruthlessly efficient. They didn't know the details, but they sensed the injustice. Antoine swaggered through the kitchen later, issuing orders with renewed arrogance, likely buoyed by my seemingly placid acceptance of my dismissal. He pointedly asked Jean-Pierre, who shadowed him like an anxious puppy, to observe how he plated the signature smoked trout dish. I watched Jean-Pierre's clumsy attempt to replicate the delicate arrangement, his brow furrowed in concentration as he missed the subtle nuances that made the dish sing. It was almost pitiful. I spent the rest of the afternoon meticulously organizing my station, packing my knives, my well-worn cookbooks, the small collection of spices I sourced personally. Then I sat down and compiled the handover notes for Jean-Pierre, exactly as requested. I included the simplified, archived recipes Antoine had uploaded. I listed the standard, large-scale suppliers Éclat used for everyday items. I detailed basic procedures. Everything was accurate, professional, and utterly useless for replicating the magic of terroir oublié. I documented every step, took photos of the notes, ensuring I had proof of my compliance with their instructions, proof that I had left behind only what was explicitly documented as belonging to Éclat. The rest, the soul, the secrets, the irreplaceable connections, walked out the door with me. As I placed my personal notebook securely in my bag, I felt a grim satisfaction. The seeds of their downfall were sown, and the roots of my defiance were firmly taking hold. The final hours of my last service at Éclat passed in a haze of forced professionalism. Each interaction, each order expedited, each plate inspected felt like a performance. I moved through the familiar rhythm of the kitchen, a space that had been my sanctuary and my battleground, acutely aware that it would soon be foreign territory. The clatter of pans, the hiss of the stoves, the rhythmic chop of knives, sounds that usually soothed me, now seemed amplified, almost discordant. Antoine kept his distance, occasionally barking orders at Jean-Pierre, who looked increasingly overwhelmed. The boy clearly lacked the intuitive understanding of pacing and pressure required during a busy service, fumbling with garnishes and misjudging cooking times. Several times, I saw Luc, my most reliable line cook, subtly step in to correct Jean-Pierre's errors, saving dishes from disaster with a quiet word or a deft adjustment. Luc caught my eye across the pass, a look of shared exasperation and understanding passing between us. He knew. He knew Jean-Pierre wasn't ready, and he knew my departure was a loss the kitchen couldn't easily absorb. As service wound down, Marie, the meticulous head pâtissière whose station neighbored mine, approached me quietly. "Amelia," she murmured, wiping her hands on her apron, her brow furrowed with concern. "Is it true, what they're saying?" I nodded, managing a small smile. "My time here is up, Marie. Restructuring." She scoffed, her Parisian accent sharp. "Restructuring? Non. It is theft. Antoine, he parades with your star while pushing you out. It is disgusting." Marie was fiercely loyal, a true artisan who respected skill above all else. "This place, it will not be the same without you, without your food." "Thank you, Marie. That means a lot," I said sincerely. "Keep making your beautiful desserts. Don't let them compromise your standards." "Never," she declared, her eyes flashing. "And Amelia, if you land somewhere worthy of you, you know where to find me." It wasn't just an offer, it was a promise. Another piece of my future clicking into place. Finally, the last order was plated, the last customer served. The adrenaline of service ebbed away, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness mixed with a strange sense of anticipation. I finished cleaning my station, leaving it immaculate, a stark contrast to the barely controlled chaos around Jean-Pierre's area. I walked towards the locker room, carrying the small box containing my personal effects. My worn case of Battier knives, cherished gifts from my mentor, the small faded photograph of my grandmother standing proudly in her farmhouse kitchen, my coded notebooks filled with culinary secrets. It felt symbolic, shedding the skin of éclat, preparing for the emergence of Racines. As I reached my locker, Antoine appeared leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, affecting an air of casual authority. "Everything squared away, Moreau?" he asked, his tone attempting nonchalance but laced with an unpleasant edge. "Perfectly," I replied, meeting his gaze coolly. "Jean-Pierre has the handover notes, recipes, supplier lists, everything documented. In the system. Good. Good." He nodded, though his eyes narrowed slightly, perhaps searching for a crack in my composure. "No hard feelings, I hope? Business is business, after all." "None at all, chef," I said, the title tasting like ash in my mouth. "Just business." He seemed momentarily thrown by my lack of reaction, my refusal to play the victim. He shifted his weight. "So," he ventured, attempting a friendlier tone, "big plans, taking some time off, traveling?" He likely pictured me retreating, defeated, perhaps opening a small, insignificant bistro somewhere quiet. A genuine smile touched my lips this time. "Actually, I start a new position on Monday." Surprise flickered across his face, quickly masked. "Oh, that was fast. Somewhere interesting?" "Very," I confirmed, closing my locker door with a decisive click. "Head chef. A new venture. We're calling it Racines." I saw the briefest flash of confusion, then dismissal, in his eyes. The name meant nothing to him yet. He clearly assumed it was some minor project, unworthy of his notice. "Ah, well," he shrugged, already losing interest. "Best of luck with that." He turned and strode away, confident in his position, oblivious to the storm gathering just beyond his gilded horizon. Leaving Éclat for the last time felt less like an ending and more like crossing a threshold. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped out the staff entrance into the cobbled alleyway. I paused, looking back at the brightly lit windows of the restaurant, the sounds of late-night cleaning echoing faintly. 15 years I'd dedicated to this craft, 3 of them poured into this building, only to be deemed redundant. But the bitterness was fading, replaced by a steely resolve. My phone buzzed. A text from Isabella. "Press release drafted. Website ready to launch Saturday a.m. Suppliers confirmed exclusive. Team members contacted. Are you ready, chef?" I typed back a single word. "Ready." The next day, Friday, was a whirlwind of final preparations. Isabella and I met with her lawyers to sign the last documents, securing the lease on the Racines location, a charming old building with exposed stone walls and wooden beams crying out for restoration. We reviewed the designs for the dining room, elegant but unpretentious, focused on natural materials, reflecting the restaurant's name and philosophy. We finalized the initial menu, a refined evolution of the terroir oublié concept, pushing the boundaries further now that I was free from Antoine's conservative influence. Most importantly, I spent hours on the phone, solidifying my network. I spoke again with Madame Dubois, assuring her that Racines would honor her truffles with the respect they deserved. I confirmed exclusive arrangements with Monsieur Bertrand for his heirloom berries and with the artisan cheesemaker whose aging process I knew intimately. I personally called Luc, Marie, and 2 other promising young cooks from the Éclat team. "Amelia," Luc said, his voice filled with relief when I offered him the sous chef position at Racines. "I handed in my notice the moment I heard you'd left. Working for Antoine without you? Impossible. When do we start?" Marie eagerly accepted the head pâtissière role. The others signed on without hesitation. My core team was assembling. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, the perfect day for the city's annual food festival, and the perfect day to launch our counteroffensive. At precisely 8 a.m., as the festival gates opened and crowds began to pour in, Isabella hit send. The Racines website went live. The press release hit the inboxes of every major food critic, blogger, and publication in the country. Social media accounts sprang to life, showcasing stunning photos of the Racines location under renovation, teasing menu concepts, and prominently featuring my story. Amelia Moreau, the visionary chef behind Éclat's 3rd star, partners with Isabella Rossi to launch Racines. It explicitly detailed my role in creating the terroir oublié menu and promised an authentic, innovative dining experience, celebrating true local heritage. The effect was immediate. My phone exploded with notifications, texts, emails, social media mentions, messages of support from fellow chefs, inquiries from journalists, congratulations from former colleagues. The narrative was shifting, fast. Meanwhile, across town at the food festival, the Eclat booth was preparing for its star turn. Antoine, oblivious, was set to give cooking demonstrations throughout the day, showcasing his signature dishes. I could almost picture the scene: the pristine white chef's coat, the confident smile, the carefully rehearsed patter about his inspiration. He had no idea the ground was crumbling beneath his feet. The suppliers weren't delivering the key ingredients. The recipes he had were incomplete. And the true story was spreading like wildfire. The severance check felt very far away. Strategy was everything now. The first whispers of trouble from the Eclat booth at the food festival reached me via text message around lunchtime on Saturday. It was from Luc, who, despite having resigned, had decided to swing by the festival out of morbid curiosity and perhaps a touch of schadenfreude. Chaos here. Antoine losing it. JP looks terrified. Suppliers didn't deliver truffle berries. Trying to sub-W standard stuff. Looks sad. I shared the text with Isabella over a working lunch at the Racine site, where we were overseeing the final touches on the kitchen installation. A grim smile played on her lips. Predictable. Arrogance is a poor substitute for preparation or talent. Throughout the afternoon, Luc's updates painted an increasingly desperate picture. Antoine's first cooking demonstration, meant to showcase the delicate phrases de bois tarlet that had charmed the Michelin inspectors, had been a disaster. Forced to use standard, commercially grown strawberries, the dish lacked its characteristic, intense sweetness and aroma. Observant food bloggers in the audience noted the discrepancy immediately, their live posts questioning the quality. His attempt at the signature juniper smoked trout fared even worse. Without the specific wood, the correct smoking time, or the subtle brine recipe stored only in my head, the result was, according to Luc, rubbery and vaguely fishy. Several prominent critics were seen leaving his demonstration shaking their heads. The final straw seemed to be the centerpiece dish, the black truffle risotto. When Madame Dubois' promised delivery failed to materialize, as per our exclusive agreement, Antoine apparently threw a tantrum, blaming the festival, organizers, and his hapless suppliers. He tried to salvage the dish using inferior summer truffles sourced last minute from a generic wholesaler, a culinary sin akin to using ketchup on steak. Crowd thinning out fast, Luc texted around 3 p.m. Critics huddled together, whispering. Antoine blaming Jean-Pierre, JP actually crying near the bins. This is painful to watch. Glad I'm out. Simultaneously, the buzz around Racine was building to a fever pitch online. The press release, amplified by Isabella's extensive network and the sheer drama of the story, had gone viral within the food world. Racine's, Narche Amelia Moreau, and even Halsher's Stolen Star were trending on culinary forums. Journalists scrambled for interviews. Food bloggers dissected the implications. The narrative was clear. Eclat's success was built on borrowed genius, and the true creator was reclaiming her throne. Isabella's phone rang constantly. Reservations for Racine's, which wasn't even due to open for another 2 months, were flooding the preliminary booking system we'd set up online, driven purely by anticipation and the unfolding drama. It seems, Isabella remarked dryly, reviewing the booking confirmations, that Monsieur Dubois severely underestimated the value of authenticity and the power of a well-timed narrative. By Saturday evening, the first online articles summarizing the day's events began to appear. Headlines were brutal. Eclat flops at Food Fest amidst chef controversy. Michelin star under pressure. Eclat falters without original creator. The Tale of Two Kitchens. Moreau rises as Dubois stumbles. The articles contrasted the disastrous Eclat demonstration with the exciting announcement of Racine's, quoting sources familiar with the situation, likely fueled by disgruntled former staff and observant critics, who confirmed my pivotal role in creating the terroir oublié menu. The fallout at Eclat was swift and severe. On Monday morning, Luc informed me that the atmosphere in the kitchen was toxic. Antoine was volatile, blaming everyone but himself. Monsieur Dubois Sr. had been seen pacing the dining room, his face pale, fielding angry calls. Jean-Pierre, utterly demoralized, had apparently stopped showing up for work. The remaining kitchen staff were actively looking for other jobs, their confidence in Éclat's future shattered. More significantly, the exclusive suppliers held firm. Madame Dubois politely informed Monsieur Dubois Sr. that her truffles were now solely committed to Racine's due to a long-standing family understanding. Monsieur Bertrand simply stated his heirloom berries required a personal touch in their handling that only I provided. Without these irreplaceable ingredients, the terroir oublié menu was effectively dead, a ghost haunting Éclat's increasingly empty dining room. Major publications began running longer think pieces. Isabella Rossi herself penned a scathing critique for her influential column, not mentioning Racine's directly, but eviscerating Éclat's performance and questioning the ethics of restaurants built on obscured talent. She lamented the potential loss of a unique culinary voice, only hinting that said voice might soon be heard elsewhere. Within 2 weeks, 3 major investors in Monsieur Dubois Sr.'s restaurant group demanded an emergency meeting. The bad press, coupled with plummeting reservations and the obvious inability to replicate the star-winning menu, threatened their investment. Rumors circulated about Monsieur Dubois Sr. desperately trying to find another chef capable of salvaging the situation, but top talent was wary of stepping into such a public relations nightmare, especially with Racine's generating so much positive anticipation. Meanwhile, progress at Racine's continued at pace. The renovations were completed ahead of schedule. The dining room, designed by a promising young local architect, was stunning. Warm, inviting, with natural wood, exposed stone, and soft lighting that highlighted the handcrafted tableware, sourced from local artisans. My new kitchen gleamed, equipped exactly to my specifications. Luc, Marie, and the rest of my hand-picked team worked tirelessly alongside me, testing recipes, refining plating, establishing operational flows. The energy was incredible, collaborative, respectful, fueled by shared passion and the excitement of building something new, something ours. There was no ego, no hierarchy beyond mutual respect for skill. Marie was experimenting with incredible, new desserts incorporating herbs from our soon-to-be-planted garden. Luc proved to be an exceptional sous chef, organized, calm under pressure, and fiercely dedicated. We held private tasting sessions for key critics and influencers, showcasing the refined Racine's menu. The feedback was overwhelming. They praised the technical skill, the depth of flavor, the clear connection to the region, but most importantly, they celebrated the authenticity, the palpable sense of passion emanating from every plate. Isabella handled the business side with masterful efficiency, managing the press, finalizing supplier contracts, and overseeing front-of-house training. Our partnership was seamless, built on trust and a shared vision. As the opening date for Racine's approached, the contrast with Éclat couldn't have been starker. Éclat was floundering, canceling reservations, its reputation in tatters. Antoine Dubois Jr. had reportedly taken an extended leave of absence. Monsieur Dubois Sr. was rumored to be considering selling the restaurant group altogether. Racine's, on the other hand, was the most talked-about opening in years. We were fully booked for 3 months straight before even serving a single customer. The tide had turned decisively. The fiasco at the festival hadn't just been a setback for Éclat. It had been the catalyst that propelled Racine into the spotlight, clearing the path for its triumphant arrival. The foundation was laid, the anticipation built. All that remained was to open the doors and let the food speak for itself. The night Racine's opened its doors felt like stepping into a dream I hadn't dared to fully imagine. Soft light spilled onto the ancient cobblestone street outside, illuminating the simple, elegant sign bearing our name. Inside, the dining room buzzed with a palpable energy, a mixture of excitement, anticipation, and the quiet confidence of a team ready to perform. Isabella, radiating calm authority, moved gracefully among the tables, greeting guests, while I stood at the pass, the heart of my new kitchen, feeling a profound sense of belonging I'd never experienced at Éclat. The first service was flawless. Luc commanded the line with quiet precision. Marie's desserts were breathtaking works of art, and the entire team moved with a synchronized grace born of shared purpose and mutual respect. Every dish that left the kitchen was an embodiment of our philosophy, rooted in tradition, elevated by innovation, crafted with integrity. The terroir, oublié, now proudly served under its rightful creator's name, tasted even better here, infused with the spirit of liberation and authenticity. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Critics lauded Racines as a revelation, a triumphant return, the new standard-bearer for regional cuisine. Reservations became even harder to secure. We weren't just a restaurant. We were a destination, a testament to the power of reclaimed identity. 6 months after opening, the news arrived. Though it hardly felt like a surprise. The new Michelin guide had stripped Éclat of its 3rd star, demoting it back to 2. The accompanying review cited inconsistency, a lack of clear culinary direction, and the departure of key talent. It was a quiet, almost perfunctory acknowledgement of what the entire industry already knew. Éclat, under the Dubois management, had become a hollow shell. On the very same day, an email arrived from the Michelin Guide inspectors. Racines was awarded 2 stars in its first year of eligibility, an exceptionally rare achievement. Attached was a personal note. Chef Moreau, your unwavering dedication to terroir and authenticity shines through. A remarkable debut. Isabella. And I celebrated with the team, not with ostentatious champagne, but with a simple, heartfelt dinner cooked together in our kitchen after service, sharing stories and laughter. It wasn't about beating Éclat or reveling in the Dubois' downfall. It was about validation, the recognition of hard work, talent, and the courage to stand up for one's creative integrity. The Dubois faded from the headlines. Rumors persisted that Monsieur Dubois Sr. had finally sold his struggling restaurant group at a significant loss, retiring quietly, his reputation tarnished. Antoine Jr., after his extended leave, reportedly moved abroad, taking a consulting position far from the demanding spotlight of the Michelin world. Éclat itself was eventually rebranded under new ownership, abandoning haute cuisine for a more casual, bistro-style concept. Its brief moment of stolen glory was over. My journey, however, was just beginning. Racines thrived, becoming a cornerstone of the city's culinary scene. I received invitations to speak at international food symposiums, sharing my story not as one of revenge, but of resilience and the importance of intellectual honesty in the creative process. I mentored young chefs, particularly women, encouraging them to document their work, protect their ideas, and demand the recognition they deserved. Madame Dubois became a regular fixture at Racines, often dining quietly at a corner table, her eyes sparkling with pride as she savored the dishes featuring her precious truffles. Monsieur Bertrand named a new varietal of heirloom tomato after me. These small gestures of respect, these genuine connections, felt more valuable than any Michelin star. One afternoon, about a year after Racines opened, Isabella came into my office, a sleek envelope in her hand. From the Women in Culinary Leadership. Alliance, she said, passing it to me. They want you to be the keynote speaker at their annual summit. I opened the invitation. The proposed topic, owning your plate, intellectual property and authenticity in the modern kitchen. It seems your story resonates, Amelia, Isabella remarked, pouring us each a celebratory glass of cider from a local orchard we championed. You've become something of an unwilling icon. I looked out the window at the thriving herb garden we had planted in the small courtyard, its green tendrils reaching towards the sun. Éclat felt like a distant memory, a painful but necessary chapter in my past. They had tried to bury my talent, to codify my soul, but they had only succeeded in forcing me to plant my roots deeper, in soil that was truly my own. It was never about revenge, Izzy, I said, raising my glass. It was about truth, about ensuring that the credit follows the creation, and about building something beautiful from the wreckage, she added, clinking her glass against mine. They thought they were closing a door, but they just forced you to build your own house, a much stronger, more honest one. That evening, as I worked on the outline for my keynote speech, I thought about the meaning of Racines, roots. It wasn't just about the ingredients or the heritage, it was about being grounded in your own value, drawing strength from your own history, and refusing to let anyone else claim ownership of your growth. The Dubois had inadvertently given me the greatest gift, the impetus to reclaim my narrative, to find my true coin guan, and from it, cultivate a legacy far richer and more enduring than a stolen star. My name, Amelia Moreau, was now synonymous with culinary integrity, innovation, and resilience, exactly where it belonged.